The crimson dust swirled outside the dome, obscuring the already dim Martian sun. Inside the hydroponics bay of New Orion, Lena Chow adjusted the spectrum settings on the LED arrays, illuminating rows of carefully cultivated plants. Her slender fingers moved with practiced precision across the control panel, her brow furrowed in concentration. The plants represented more than just food. They were life itself for the colony nestled in the depths of Valles Marineris. Photosynthetic efficiency down 12%, she muttered, recording the data in her tablet. We'll need to adjust the nitrogen cycle again. The year was 2087, and humanity had established several outposts on Mars to survey and exploit the Red Planet's resources. New Orion, located in the Valles Marineris Valley, was one of the 6 largest settlements sponsored by Earth Union. The colony specialized in hydroponic agriculture and mining rare minerals, supporting a population of scientists, engineers, and technicians who had come to Mars with dreams of pioneering a new world. But Earth was facing a severe financial crisis, and the space research budget was shrinking rapidly. Earth Union was considering gradually withdrawing investments from remote colonies to address internal crises. This looming threat cast a shadow over the daily operations of New Orion. Lena paused her work as her communication device beeped. A message from Asha Patel, the colony's doctor and psychologist, appeared on the screen. Emergency meeting at Command Center, 1500 hours. Attendance mandatory. Lena checked the time. She had 30 minutes to finish her work and make it to the meeting. With quick efficiency, she completed the adjustments to the light spectrum and nutrition mix before heading to the airlock. As she waited for the pressure to equalize, she caught her reflection in the polished metal surface. At 29, her Vietnamese heritage was evident in her dark eyes and black hair pulled back in a practical bun. Living on Mars had given her skin a pallor that belied her natural complexion, a reminder of the years spent under artificial lighting. The corridor leading to the command center was unusually crowded. Colony residents whispered among themselves, tension evident in their faces. Lena spotted Asha in the crowd and made her way to her friend. "What's happening?" Lena asked, noting the worry lines around Asha's eyes. "Earth Union broadcast," Asha replied, her Indian accent more pronounced with stress. "They're making an announcement about the Martian program budget." Lena felt her stomach tighten. Everyone knew the financial situation on Earth was precarious, but they had hoped their colony would be spared the worst cuts. They entered the command center together, finding seats near the back of the room. Captain Thoker Jensen stood at the front, his tall Scandinavian frame rigid with tension. At 45, the American of Scandinavian descent had served in the United Space Forces during the Mars Belt border conflict. He was the bridge between Earth Union and the New Orion residents, typically maintaining a pragmatic view of politics. Privately, he believed the colony existed thanks to funding from Earth. "Attention," he called, his deep voice silencing the murmurs. "We're receiving a live broadcast from Earth Union headquarters. There will be a signal delay of approximately 13 minutes. I ask for your patience and calm." The large screen on the wall flickered to life, showing the Earth Union logo before switching to a panel of officials seated around a conference table. The colony members watched in tense silence as the Union Chancellor began speaking. In light of the ongoing global financial crisis, the Earth Union Council has made the difficult decision to implement significant budget cuts to the Mars program. Effective immediately, half of the upcoming month's salary allocation will be delayed indefinitely. Colonies are instructed to reduce personnel and restrict food transportation from Earth. The announcement continued, detailing the extent of the cuts and the rationale behind them. As the broadcast ended, the command center erupted in a cacophony of voices. Questions, protests, and expressions of fear mingled in the air. Captain Jensen raised his hands for silence. "I understand your concerns. This is difficult news for all of us. The reality is that our food reserves will only last approximately 6 months, under current consumption rates. We need to implement conservation measures immediately." As if to punctuate the gravity of their situation, the emergency alarm began to wail. The red warning lights cast an eerie glow throughout the room. "Dust storm warning," announced the automated system. "Category 4, storm approaching Valles Marineris sector. Estimated arrival, 6 hours. Duration, approximately 14 days. All personnel implement storm protocols immediately." Lena exchanged a worried glance with Asha. A Category 4 dust storm would completely block their solar arrays for at least 2 weeks. The backup charging systems would only provide temporary power. "Perfect timing," Asha muttered darkly. Captain Jensen's voice cut through the growing panic. "Emergency protocols are now in effect. All cultivation areas must close, and we must minimize the use of energy-intensive equipment. Emergency lighting only. Hydroponics lab cultures will have reduced spectrum service." As the meeting dispersed, Lena hurried back to her hydroponics bay. The combination of budget cuts and an approaching dust storm created a potential death sentence for New Arian. If they couldn't maintain food production through the storm while dealing with reduced Earth support, they might not have enough food to survive the coming Martian winter. Lena faced an internal conflict. She needed to reduce food production to sustain long-term survival. But doing so might mean some colonists wouldn't have enough to eat in the short term. The ethical weight of the decision pressed heavily on her shoulders. The belief that had once united the colony, that they were pioneers building a new society free from Earth's political conflicts and showcasing humanity's most advanced technology, now seemed fragile. The unspoken question hung in the air. Were they truly pioneers, or just abandoned horses waiting to die? The next morning, Lena gathered her team of hydroponic engineers. The storm was now visible on the horizon, a massive wall of red dust crawling toward them. "We need to optimize our processes," she explained, projecting diagrams onto the lab's main screen. "First, we'll modify the LED spectrum to conserve energy. Second, we'll restructure the water circulation system to prioritize plant resilience rather than rapid growth. Third, we'll coordinate with distribution stations to allocate food to each family, with priority given to children, pregnant women, the elderly, and those with underlying conditions." Jonas Vega, the head of electromechanical systems, immediately objected. The 31-year-old engineer ran a hand through his dark hair in frustration. "We can't cut the spectrum this deeply," he argued. "The plants will die en masse. It would be better to waste some energy than lose everything." Asha, who had joined the meeting, offered an alternative. "We could supplement with synthetic food, protein extracts from microalgae, to compensate for the reduced vegetable production. However, the production cost is very high. We can't supply the entire colony." Lena felt torn between two directions: intensifying high-risk biological cultivation techniques, which required less space but had a high failure rate, or accepting reduced productivity, forcing some colonists to sacrifice so others could survive. As the dust storm approached, tensions within the colony escalated. News of food rationing and priority distribution regulations deepened class divisions. Wealthier families who had stored food began hoarding more, creating a clandestine black market. A group calling themselves the Righteous, self-proclaimed adherents to fairness regulations, condemned the wealthy as betrayers of the ideal, gradually developing a tendency to boycott and create social instability. Local journalists, running personal blogs connected through the internal network, began publishing sensational headlines. "Colony about to be abandoned. Residents will become destitute," spreading panic. The mounting fear led to several scuffles in the main station, requiring security intervention. Families with small children pleaded, "We have the right to live." Tensions exploded between the social justice group and those focused on individual and group survival. Lena witnessed these scenes with growing pressure. Her job, which once seemed purely technical, now carried the responsibility of becoming a mediator in a community losing faith. When the dust storm finally hit New Arion, it did so with unexpected ferocity. For 3 consecutive days, the howling winds battered the colony's structures, overloading the buffer batteries. The oxygen storage station temporarily malfunctioned due to a pressure regulation valve error caused by temperature fluctuations. Oxygen concentration dropped suddenly, forcing residents to limit physical activity. Many experienced mild breathing difficulties. The hydroponic greenhouse lost power, causing the water pumping system to cease operation. Water pipes froze in localized areas. Lena and Jonas, along with a team of engineers, had to intervene urgently, using backup generators to restart the pumps, but they quickly depleted their fuel reserves. Half of the plants in the green garden were damaged due to lack of light and lowered temperatures. Lena lost nearly 40% of her vegetable production in a single night. Amidst the technical chaos, a secret faction emerged. The Unforgotten, comprising former military personnel, cargo drivers, and several engineers who didn't trust Earth Union. They wanted to collaborate with private space capitalists, Space Corp, Earth Union's competitors, in exchange for evacuation to another colony, allegedly with longer survival plans. The Unforgotten contacted several influential figures, forming alliances. Lena learned about this through Asha, who had overheard conversations in the psychology ward. This secret group was planning to seize control of the food storage, forcing Captain Jensen to surrender, or compelling Earth Union to send an emergency supply ship, or they would let the entire colony slowly die. This created a conflict between Lena, representing engineers who held fast to scientific principles, and the Unforgotten, representing the discontented class, ready to use violence to survive. The situation reached its breaking point when a group of soldiers affiliated with the Unforgotten raided the central food storage, taking control of all distribution supplies. They declared, "From now on, anyone who wants to live must obey the society. If Earth Union doesn't send a supply ship, we'll sell food to Space Corp to buy ammunition." The New Aryan residents divided into 3 factions. Those supporting the Unforgotten, believing that strong leadership was needed rather than waiting for Earth Union's rescue. The neutral faction, the majority who just wanted to maintain peace, not choosing sides, but now forced to as food became a weapon. The opposition, mostly engineers and scientists, including Lena, Asha, Jonas, and several young people, determined to defend fair distribution principles to prevent the colony from becoming a bloody black market. Captain Jensen faced an impossible choice. If he opposed the Unforgotten, he might have to confront internal violence. If he yielded, his goal of maintaining faith with Earth Union would completely collapse. The turning point came during what would later be known as the Decision Night. Lena, Jonas, and a group of engineers quietly bypassed the locks on storage containers during curfew hours. They used an old underground tunnel system, built during the colony's early days but since forgotten, to access the warehouse. The Unforgotten faction discovered them, triggering an armed conflict. Gunfire echoed through the narrow tunnels. Lena faced Jeremiah Cade, the military leader of the Unforgotten, directly. Jeremiah, a former space officer, believed Earth Union had deliberately abandoned New Arion, and only by seizing power could they protect the residents. "We need to work together to maintain the hydroponic garden," Lena tried to reason with him. "If everyone dies from lack of food, no faction wins." Jeremiah just smirked. "When I control the food, I control your lives." Meanwhile, Jonas noticed that the Unforgotten members had entered the auxiliary generator room, preparing to shut down the system and cut off all power to paralyze the hydroponic garden. He made the split-second decision to rush into the radio room, using his body to block the electrical compartment door, so Lena and the rest of the team could reach the food storage. Jonas was severely injured but managed to activate the auto-secure lock to stop the enemy. In his final moments, he looked up weakly and said, "Hydroponic water. Plants still need light. Keep hope alive." Hearing gunshots, Captain Jensen and the security team rushed in, and the conflict between the two sides intensified. The situation outside remained chaotic, with the dust storm showing no signs of abating. Lena and Asha finally reached the storage facility. They saw residents, familiar faces, confronting guns under the flashing red light of the emergency security lamp. Lena made the decision to broadcast directly to Earth Union. She used the emergency communication system, interplanetary satellite network, to send a copy of current food production data, along with images of the violence and a plea for help. The signal delay over the 200 million kilometer distance meant it would take at least 13 minutes for the signal to reach Earth, and then Earth Union would need several days to approve an order. Lena simultaneously broadcast a message over the community speaker system. "We, the people of New Orion, will survive through our own efforts. If Earth Union won't help, we must find a way to save ourselves. Violence solves nothing. Stand on the side of science and hope." At the food storage facility, the Unforgotten faction was stopped by the security team and several young residents. The larger conflict was contained without escalating further. Jonas was taken to the medical area, his chance of survival very slim. The dust storm began to weaken at dawn the next day. The first ray of sunlight penetrated the dome of the hydroponic garden, illuminating the green plant layer, revealing the first ray of hope. In the days that followed, teenagers and medical staff began replanting damaged vegetable patches according to the optimized plan proposed by Lena. Everyone realized that technology would determine survival, not violence. Asha spent many nights at Jonas's bedside, encouraging the community to maintain a spirit of unity. Meanwhile, Lena focused on redesigning the hydroponic system with self-repair modules based on the principle of self-structuring microalgae, requiring minimal human intervention. When Lena's message reached Earth Union, an emergency session was convened. The images of New Orion, a colony in chaos and violence, moved many government leaders to tears. Earth Union decided to urgently dispatch a relief transport ship carrying improved equipment, genetically modified seeds to accelerate plant growth against dust storms, and 50% of their emergency food reserves. They also decided to reduce exploration projects to Saturn and asteroids, dedicating all resources to saving New Orion. The order was issued: no colony shall be abandoned. The Unforgotten faction, after hearing that Earth Union was willing to provide support, lost their justification for seizing the warehouse. Leader Jeremiah was forced to withdraw, though some hardline members remained. A residents' meeting was held. Captain Jensen announced that the relief ship would arrive in 30 days, according to the Martian clock. The groups that had just experienced conflict all had to sign a collective survival commitment. All food would be distributed fairly, according to guidelines from the hydroponic engineering team. The Unforgotten would be disbanded, but members would cooperate with the security team to maintain order. Most urgently, they needed to train more young people to support agriculture, medical care, and technical work so that when the ship arrived, the colony could operate independently for longer. In the days before the relief ship arrived, New Orion's internal economy gradually recovered thanks to new cultivation methods and automation equipment. The material conversion process, transforming Martian red mud into independent biological filters, was put into testing, promising to reduce energy consumption in the future. Young soldiers who had followed the Unforgotten volunteered for agricultural skills training programs, transitioning from technical students to farmers. About 30 days later, the transport ship Irene appeared in the Martian sky, nestled under the burning red light. Joy and tears overflowed as residents gathered at the reception area, waving flags, some unable to contain their emotions. Lena waved to the Irene as it landed. Receiving supplies was emotional. By then, the food reserves were nearly depleted, and many had resorted to synthetic food from microalgae. Cheers echoed throughout the canyon. The Irene carried advanced 3D printing equipment, biological modules that could generate heat and light, and modified seeds resistant to dust storms, all developed by Earth scientists. Lena and Captain Jensen proposed a new Aryan self-reliance program, enhanced training for local technicians, development of self-sufficient models, and gradual reduction of dependence on Earth. A medical station, seed nursery, and small-scale nuclear power station were built one after another. Most movingly, Asha organized a memorial service for Jonas Vega and other victims who had sacrificed themselves. They built a small cast model of Jonas's portrait in the ecological park, a green planning program, shade, and monument, named Jonas Vega, Seed of Hope. The story concludes with an image of Lena standing on top of the observation deck, looking down at the Valles Marineris Valley. The rows of green vegetables glistened under the purple-red sky. She thought to herself, "We are abandoned children, but we will never abandon each other." Earth Union promised to continue monitoring and supporting them, but New Aryan had begun its journey of self-operation and self-reliance. The dust-laden Martian wind howled outside the dome of New Aryan colony. Elena Lena Chow studied the readouts on her tablet with growing concern. The hydroponics lab had seen a 15% drop in productivity since the announcement, whether from the reduced light protocols or the staff's growing anxiety. The result was the same. They were producing less food when they needed more. "Running another spectrum analysis," she announced to her team, tucking a strand of black hair behind her ear. At 29, the Vietnamese hydroponic bioengineer had already earned her position as head of food cultivation, a critical role that kept the entire colony alive in the harsh Martian environment. New Aryan, nestled deep within the rust-colored walls of Valles Marineris, had been established as one of Earth Union's 6 major Martian colonies. Its primary focus on hydroponic agriculture and rare mineral extraction had made it a model of extraterrestrial sustainability. Until now. Asha Patel approached, her face tense. At 34, the Indian doctor and psychologist served as the keeper of records for New Aryan's residents, often mediating conflicts when they arose. She and Lena had formed a friendship as young Asian engineers far from home. "Bad news from the emergency meeting?" Lena asked, noting her friend's expression. "Worse than expected," Asha replied, lowering her voice. "Captain Jensen just received additional instructions from Earth Union. They're considering evacuating half the personnel if productivity doesn't improve. Apparently, we're no longer a cost-effective investment." Lena's hands stilled on the control panel. "They can't just... They wouldn't." "They would. Earth's financial crisis is deepening. The space budget was the first to be slashed." Asha glanced around the lab. "And there's more. The spring dust storm is approaching. Meteorology predicts it'll hit within 48 hours. Lena closed her eyes briefly. The Martian spring always brought massive dust storms that reduced visibility throughout Valles Marineris. More critically, those storms would cut off their solar power arrays for weeks. The backup energy supplies were limited, designed for emergencies, not extended use. "So we're facing an energy crisis and a food shortage simultaneously," Lena said, her mind already calculating variables, survival equations. "Captain Jensen has called for another colony-wide meeting tonight. He's going to announce rationing measures." After Asha left, Lena stared at the rows of carefully cultivated plants. The semi-transparent dome overhead filtered the Martian sunlight through spectrum converters, allowing just enough to reach the plants below. The underground tunnels connecting the living stations were designed to protect against dust storms. But the hydroponics bay needed light. Without sufficient power for the LED arrays during the storm, many plants would die. Lena felt the weight of responsibility settle heavier on her shoulders. The colony's food supply depended entirely on her hydroponic gardens. Now, she faced an impossible decision: reduce production to maintain long-term survival or continue growing beyond current capacity, risking complete failure due to power shortages. As the announcement of food rationing spread, the colony's atmosphere transformed. The once unified community of scientists, engineers, and workers, people who had come to Mars with dreams of building a society free from Earth's political conflicts, now eyed each other with suspicion. The evening meeting was tense, with Captain Thoker Jensen standing stiffly at the front of the crowded common hall. At 45, the former United Space Forces officer carried himself with military precision, his Scandinavian heritage evident in his tall frame and ice-blue eyes. "As you all know," he began, "Earth Union has cut our funding by 60% effective immediately. Additionally, the Category 4 dust storm will reach us by tomorrow evening." He paused, letting the information sink in. "We must implement strict energy conservation protocols. All non-essential systems will be powered down. Hydroponics will operate on minimal settings. Food rationing begins tonight." The announcement sparked immediate reaction. Shouts of protest rose from several corners. "What about our families?" demanded a woman holding an infant. "My contract guarantees full nutrition," called another voice. Jensen raised his hands for silence. "I understand your concerns. These measures are temporary until Earth Union sends relief supplies." A hollow promise, Lena thought. She had seen the transmission timestamps. Earth Union's last message had been delayed, suggesting they were already deprioritizing New Arian's communications. The days that followed brought rapid changes to colony life. Lena worked with her team to modify the hydroponic systems, changing the LED spectrum to conserve energy and restructuring the water circulation to prioritize plant resilience over growth rates. Jonas Vega, the head of electromechanical systems, fought her at every turn. "This is madness," he argued during a heated meeting. "You're cutting the light spectrum too deeply. The plants need full-spectrum illumination to produce nutrients." "And we need power to survive the storm," Lena countered. "Every percentage point of energy we save extends our survival time." "At what cost? Malnourished colonists? Disease outbreaks?" Their debate reflected the larger conflict spreading throughout New Arian. As rationing took effect, the community fractured. Wealthy families who had personal food reserves began hoarding more. A black market emerged, with luxury food items trading at exorbitant prices. In response, a group calling themselves the Righteous formed, advocating strict adherence to rationing protocols. They began publicly shaming those suspected of hoarding, sometimes physically blocking access to the black market trading spots. The colony's internal news network, a collection of blogs and announcement boards, fanned the flames with sensationalist headlines predicting doom. One popular post declared, "Earth abandons Mars. How long until we starve?" Lena watched with growing alarm as her technical decisions became political flashpoints. When she allocated extra rations to pregnant women and children, she faced backlash from single adults who claimed discrimination. When she reduced water circulation to certain plant varieties to save others, she was accused of favoritism towards certain ethnic food preferences. "I never signed up to be judge and jury," she confided to Asha during a rare quiet moment. "I'm an engineer, not a politician." "None of us expected this," Asha replied, looking exhausted. Her medical bay had seen an uptick in stress-related complaints. "But we're pioneers, remember? We're writing the rules as we go." The dust storm hit with greater force than predicted. Red particles blasted against the dome, reducing visibility to mere meters. The solar arrays went offline within hours, plunging the colony into emergency power mode. The main corridors dimmed to a ghostly red glow as non-essential systems shut down. In the hydroponics bay, Lena and her team worked frantically to maintain critical functions. When the primary water pump failed due to power fluctuations, they manually operated the backup system, taking shifts around the clock. Despite their efforts, the temperature regulation system faltered, dropping several degrees below optimal growing conditions. Lena watched helplessly as frost formed on some of the more sensitive plants. By the third day of the storm, nearly 40% of their food production capacity was compromised. "We're losing too much," Jonas admitted as they surveyed the damage. His earlier antagonism had given way to grim cooperation. At this rate, we won't make it through winter. The crisis deepened when the oxygen regulation system malfunctioned. A pressure valve error caused by temperature fluctuations led to a sudden drop in oxygen levels throughout the living quarters. Residents reported dizziness and breathing difficulties. Security had to break up a panic-driven crowd attempting to access the emergency oxygen reserves. As the physical infrastructure strained under the storm's assault, the social fabric of New Orion unraveled further. Asha brought disturbing news to Lena during an emergency management meeting. "There's a new faction forming," she whispered, careful not to be overheard. "They call themselves the Unforgotten, former military personnel, mostly, with some transport pilots and engineers. They're saying Earth Union has deliberately abandoned us, and they're reaching out to Space Corp." "Space Corp," Lena repeated in disbelief. The private space exploration company was Earth Union's main competitor, known for its aggressive expansion tactics. What could they possibly offer? Evacuation, supposedly. They claim Space Corp has a better-equipped colony with longer-term sustainability plans, but the price would be handing over our mineral extraction rights and technological patents. The implications were clear. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about political allegiance and the future of Mars colonization. If New Orion aligned with Space Corp, it would create a precedent for other struggling colonies. Before Lena could process this new complication, the colony's emergency alarm blared. Captain Jensen's voice came over the communication system, tense but controlled. "Security breach at main food storage. All security personnel report immediately. All other residents, lockdown procedures in effect." The Unforgotten had made their move. Led by Jeremiah Cade, a former space officer with combat experience from the Mars Belt conflict, a group of armed colonists seized control of the central food storage facility. They barricaded themselves inside and issued demands via the colony's communication system. "Attention, New Orion!" Cade's voice boomed through the speakers. "The Earth Union has abandoned us to die. We have taken control of the food supply to ensure fair distribution and survival. Anyone who wishes to eat must register with our new governance council. Captain Jensen, you have 1 hour to formally recognize our authority, or we begin selective distribution." The takeover split the colony into 3 distinct factions. Some residents, particularly those who had felt marginalized by the rationing system, supported the Unforgotten's actions. Others remained neutral, too afraid to take sides, but desperate for stability. The third group, primarily scientists and engineers led by Lena, opposed the coup, believing that force would only lead to more violence. Captain Jensen convened an emergency council in the medical bay, one of the few areas still considered neutral territory. His face was grim as he addressed the small group of department heads. "They have 18 armed individuals inside the storage facility," he reported. "Enough firepower to hold off a direct assault, and they've rigged explosive devices to the main food containers. If we try to force our way in, they'll destroy enough supplies to doom us all." "What are their actual demands?" asked Nadia Sinclair, the 30-year-old geological engineer who had become a key supporter of Lena's resistance efforts. "Beyond recognition of their authority, they want me to send an ultimatum to Earth Union. Either send immediate relief supplies, or they'll negotiate directly with Space Corp." Jensen's expression hardened. "They're using our survival as leverage in a political game between Earth Union and private enterprise." "Can we negotiate?" Asha suggested. "Find middle ground." "Cade isn't interested in compromise," Jensen replied. "He believes Earth has already decided to let us die, and he's determined to save as many as possible by any means necessary." Lena had been quietly calculating scenarios while the others talked. "There might be another way," she said slowly. "The old maintenance tunnels from the original settlement run beneath the storage facility. They were sealed off during the last expansion, but they should still be structurally sound." "You're suggesting a covert operation?" Jensen asked, interest sparking in his eyes. A small team could access the facility through the tunnels, bypass their security, and secure the food storage before they realize what's happening. The plan took shape quickly. While Jensen created a diversion by opening negotiations with Cade, Lena would lead a small team through the maintenance tunnels. Their goal wasn't to confront the Unforgotten directly, but to secure access to the food supplies and disable the explosives. As they prepared for the operation, Jonas approached Lena privately. "I'm going with you," he said, his expression leaving no room for argument. "It's too dangerous," Lena objected. "We need you to maintain the backup power systems." "Haruto can handle that," Jonas replied, referring to the logistics coordinator who had joined their resistance. "You'll need someone who understands the electrical systems to disable their security measures." "That's me." Lena knew he was right, though she hated putting more people at risk. Together with Asha, Nadia, and 2 security officers who had remained loyal to Jensen, they gathered the necessary equipment and prepared to enter the tunnels during the night cycle when most of the Unforgotten would be sleeping. The old maintenance passages were narrow and dusty, barely illuminated by their handheld lights. The group moved slowly, consulting the outdated maps Nadia had recovered from the geological archives. The tunnels had been constructed during the colony's founding phase, designed to provide access to the critical infrastructure beneath the habitation modules. "These should lead directly beneath the storage facility," Nadia whispered, pointing to a junction ahead. "According to the plans, there's an access panel that opens into the environmental control room, which connects to the main storage area." As they approached the access point, Jonas moved ahead to examine the panel. "It's been sealed," he reported, running his hands along the edges. "But not permanently. I can bypass this." While Jonas worked on the panel, Lena's communication device vibrated silently. A message from Captain Jensen. "Negotiation stalling. Cade suspects something. Proceed with caution." The warning came too late. As Jonas finally released the access panel, the alarm system blared to life. They had triggered a secondary security measure that hadn't appeared on their outdated schematics. "Move! Now!" Lena ordered. They had lost the element of surprise, but they could still complete the mission if they acted quickly. The team scrambled through the opening into the environmental control room. Beyond, they could hear shouts and the sound of weapons being readied. The Unforgotten knew they were there. "I'll secure this area," Jonas said, moving toward the control panels. "If I can override their systems, I can lock down sections of the facility and isolate their forces." "Be careful," Lena urged, then led the others toward the storage area. They had barely made it halfway across the control room when the door burst open. 3 armed members of the Unforgotten entered, weapons raised. "Stop right there," commanded the leader, a woman Lena recognized as a former security officer. "Hands where I can see them." Before anyone could comply, Jonas lunged for the main control panel, slamming his hand down on the emergency override. The lights flickered as the system initiated a security lockdown. The momentary distraction was enough for the security officers with Lena to draw their own weapons. Chaos erupted. Gunfire echoed in the confined space as both sides took cover behind equipment. Lena pulled Asha behind a large ventilation unit, while Nadia ducked beneath a workstation. "We need to reach the main storage," Lena shouted over the noise. "That's where the bulk of the supplies are." Through the confusion, she saw Jonas making his way toward a secondary control station. He caught her eye and gestured toward a side door, an alternate route to the storage area. "Go," he mouthed. "I'll hold them here." Lena hesitated, torn between completing the mission and helping her friend. But she knew what was at stake. Nodding once, she signaled to Asha and Nadia, and they began moving toward the indicated door, using the crossfire as cover. They had almost reached it when Lena heard Jonas shout in pain. She turned to see him clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. Despite his injury, he continued working at the control panel. "Keep going," he called to her. "I've almost got it." The side door slid open, and Lena pushed Asha and Nadia through, before taking one last look at Jonas. Their eyes met across the room, and in that moment, she knew what he was planning. "Jonas, don't!" But it was too late. He hit the final sequence on the panel, and thick security doors began descending throughout the facility. "Get to the storage!" he gasped. "Save what you can!" The door between them closed before she could respond, sealing him in with the unforgotten forces. The last thing she saw was Jonas slumping against the control panel, his face pale but determined, heart pounding. Lena turned to follow Asha and Nadia. The narrow corridor led them directly to the main storage facility, a vast chamber filled with stacked containers of preserved food, seed banks, and protein synthesis equipment. At the center of the room stood Jeremiah Cade, surrounded by several armed supporters. His eyebrows rose in surprise when he saw them. "Engineer Cow," he acknowledged. "I should have known you'd be behind this. Come to save your precious food supplies?" "I've come to stop you from using our survival as a bargaining chip," Lena replied, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This isn't about politics, Jeremiah. It's about keeping everyone alive." "That's exactly what I'm doing," Cade countered. "Earth Union has written us off as acceptable losses. They'll let us starve unless we force their hand. By threatening to destroy our food? By creating a dictatorship where you decide who eats and who doesn't? By showing strength," Cade's voice rose. "The weak get abandoned. Engineer Cow. That's the reality of frontier life. Earth Union only responds to power and leverage." "And what about Space Corp? Do you really believe they care about our survival? We're just assets to them, mineral rights and intellectual property." A flicker of doubt crossed Cade's face, but he quickly masked it. "At least they're offering a future. What's your alternative? Slowly starve while hoping Earth remembers we exist?" Before Lena could respond, the facility's communication system crackled to life. Captain Jensen's voice filled the room. "Attention all personnel. Security teams are now entering the storage facility. Surrender your weapons, and no charges will be filed." Cade laughed bitterly. An empty threat. His security forces are outgunned and outnumbered. But even as he spoke, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from multiple corridors. Jensen had mobilized not just the remaining security personnel, but volunteers from throughout the colony, engineers, medical staff, and ordinary residents who refused to let their fate be decided by force. Cade's supporters exchanged uncertain glances. The situation was rapidly shifting against them. Lena saw her opportunity. "It doesn't have to end in more violence," she said, stepping forward. "We all want the same thing, survival. But we need to stand united to achieve it." "Pretty words," Cade scoffed. "But Earth has already abandoned us." "Then we make them remember," Lena replied. She pulled out her tablet and activated a program she had prepared. The large display screen on the wall flickered to life, showing a direct feed to Earth Union's emergency channel. "We show them what's happening here, not as a threat, but as a reminder of their responsibility." The channel would transmit everything: the armed standoff, the desperate conditions, the faces of the colonists fighting for survival. Earth Union would be forced to witness the consequences of their budget cuts in real time, with a 13-minute delay. "This isn't just about us anymore," Lena continued. "It's about every colony, every outpost. If Earth Union abandons New Orion, what's to stop them from abandoning others when convenient? We need to remind them that we're not just numbers on a spreadsheet. We're human beings who trusted their promises." Her words resonated not just with her allies, but with some of Cade's supporters as well. The tension in the room began to shift, as both sides recognized the truth in what she said. The standoff might have resolved peacefully then, if not for a sudden explosion that rocked the facility. The lights flickered, and emergency alarms blared. "The auxiliary power station," Nadia exclaimed. "Something's wrong." Lena's blood ran cold. The auxiliary station controlled life support for half the colony. If it failed completely, hundreds would be at risk. "What have you done?" she demanded of Cade. "Nothing," he replied, looking genuinely surprised. "This wasn't part of our plan." The emergency communication system activated. Critical failure in auxiliary power station. Oxygen levels dropping in residential sectors 3 through 7. All available technical personnel report immediately. Lena realized with horror what had happened. Jonas had mentioned that some members of the Unforgotten had entered the auxiliary generator room. They must have been attempting to cut power to strengthen their position. But something had gone catastrophically wrong. "We need to help them," she said, looking at both her team and Cade's forces. "This is bigger than our conflict." For a moment, no one moved. Then Cade lowered his weapon. "Go," he said to his people. "Save who you can." The unified emergency response that followed would later be seen as the turning point for New Orion. Engineers from both factions worked side by side to stabilize the power systems, while medical teams treated the injured. When they finally reached the auxiliary control room, they found Jonas. He had intercepted the Unforgotten members attempting to sabotage the generator and had physically blocked the control panel with his body to prevent them from completing their task. In the struggle, a coolant line had ruptured, exposing him to toxic gases. Despite his injuries, he had managed to activate the emergency containment protocol, preventing the damage from spreading throughout the colony. "The hydroponic systems," he whispered when they found him. "Are they safe?" "Yes," Lena assured him, fighting back tears as Asha worked to stabilize him. "You saved them, Jonas. You saved all of us." His lips curved in a faint smile before he lost consciousness. The medical team rushed him to the infirmary. But Asha's expression told Lena what she already feared. His prognosis was grave. In the aftermath of what became known as the generator crisis, the colony underwent a profound transformation. Captain Jensen convened an emergency assembly where representatives from all factions, including a subdued Jeremiah Cade, gathered to determine their path forward. "We've received word from Earth Union," Jensen announced. "They've seen our transmission." The assembly hall fell silent, every resident holding their breath. "In response to our situation, they have authorized an emergency relief mission. The transport vessel Irene will depart within 48 hours, carrying supplies, equipment, and reinforcements. Estimated arrival time, 30 Martian days." The hall erupted in cheers and sobs of relief. After weeks of feeling abandoned, help was finally coming. "However," Jensen continued, once the noise subsided, 30 days is still a long time. We need to implement sustainable measures to ensure our survival until then." Lena stepped forward at Jensen's gesture. "The dust storm is beginning to subside," she reported. "We should regain partial solar power within 3 days. In the meantime, we need to reorganize our resources and rebuild what was damaged." She outlined a comprehensive plan, restoring the hydroponic systems using modified growth protocols that she and her team had developed, implementing a fair distribution system that addressed the concerns that had fueled the Unforgotten's rebellion, and establishing a colony-wide council to ensure all voices were heard in future decisions. "Most importantly," she concluded, "we need to recommit to our original mission. We came to Mars not just to extract resources, but to build something new, a community that represents the best of humanity. The past weeks have shown us both our worst fears and our greatest potential. Let's choose the latter." The assembly overwhelmingly approved the proposals. Even Cade, chastened by the near disaster his actions had precipitated, pledged his support. The Unforgotten was officially disbanded, though many of its former members joined the Security Council to help maintain order during the difficult weeks ahead. As New Arion began its recovery, Lena spent her days divided between the hydroponics bay and the infirmary. Jonas remained in critical condition, his body slowly healing from the toxic exposure. Asha kept him in an induced coma to give him the best chance of recovery. "Talk to him," Asha encouraged during one of Lena's visits. Studies show coma patients often can hear what's happening around them. So Lena talked. She told Jonas about the progress in the hydroponics bay, the new seedlings emerging from the damaged crops, the innovative filtration system they were developing using Martian soil components. She described the colony's transformation, how former adversaries now work together, how children had started a project to decorate the common areas with artwork depicting Martian landscapes interspersed with Earth memories. "We're creating something special here," she told his unconscious form. "Something worth fighting for. We need you to be part of it. Jonas, please come back to us." The days passed in a rhythm of work, recovery, and preparation for the Irene's arrival. The dust storm finally cleared completely, revealing the stark beauty of Valles Marineris beyond the dome. Solar power returned to full capacity, allowing the colony to restore most systems to normal operation. The changed atmosphere was palpable. Where once there had been tension and suspicion, now there was determination and solidarity. Residents who had hoarded food now contributed to communal meals. Those who had skills in agriculture volunteered in the hydroponics bay, while others with technical expertise helped repair damaged systems. 25 days after the generator crisis, as Lena was reviewing growth data in her office, Asha burst in without knocking. "He's awake," she announced, breathless with excitement. "Jonas is awake!" Lena rushed to the infirmary, her heart pounding. Jonas lay propped up in bed, pale and thin but unmistakably alert. His eyes found hers as she entered, and a weak smile spread across his face. "Did we win?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lena laughed through sudden tears. "Yes," she assured him, taking his hand. "Thanks to you, we won." "The plants?" "Growing better than ever. We've implemented your modified filtration system. It's increased efficiency by 20%. Pride flickered in his eyes. "Good. That's good." In the days that followed, Jonas's recovery became a symbol of the colony's resilience. As he regained strength, he shared his expertise from his hospital bed, reviewing technical plans and offering suggestions for improvements. The young engineers who had once seen him as merely a department head now sought his mentorship, inspired by his sacrifice. 5 days before the Irene's scheduled arrival, Captain Jensen called Lena to the communication center. "Earth Union wants to speak with you directly," he explained, looking both puzzled and impressed. "It seems your transmission made quite an impression." The face that appeared on the screen belonged to the Union Chancellor herself, the highest authority in Earth's governing body. Despite the 13-minute delay, the conversation felt immediate and urgent. "Engineer Cow," the Chancellor began, "your actions have forced us to reconsider our approach to the Mars colonies. The images you transmitted, of both the crisis and the extraordinary response of New Arian's residents, have resonated deeply with the people of Earth." She explained that public opinion had shifted dramatically after seeing the reality of life on Mars. Protests had erupted outside Earth Union headquarters, demanding continued support for the colonies. Emergency funding had been approved, not just for New Arian but for all Martian settlements. "Moreover," the Chancellor continued, "we are implementing structural changes to prevent such situations in the future. A direct communication line will be established between each colony and Earth Union leadership. No budget decisions affecting colonial life support will be made without consultation with colonial representatives." Lena could hardly believe what she was hearing. Their desperate gambit had not only saved New Arian, but potentially transformed the relationship between Earth and its colonies. "The Irene carries more than just supplies," the Chancellor concluded. "It brings the renewed commitment of Earth to the Mars colonization project. We will not abandon our pioneers again." When the transmission ended, Lena sat in stunned silence for several moments. Captain Jensen watched her with a mixture of respect and curiosity. "You've accomplished something remarkable," he said finally. You've reminded Earth why we came to Mars in the first place. Lena shook her head slowly. It wasn't just me. It was all of us, even those who opposed us. We proved that humanity can overcome its worst instincts and work together, even in the most extreme circumstances. The day of the Irene's arrival dawned clear and cold. The Martian sky a dusty orange-red above the colony. Every resident who could walk gathered in the observation dome to watch the approaching ship, a gleaming silver against the rusty backdrop. As the vessel descended toward the landing pad, cheers erupted throughout the colony. Children who had never seen a ship from Earth pressed their faces against the dome's transparent sections, pointing and exclaiming in wonder. Lena stood beside Jonas, who had insisted on leaving the infirmary for the occasion. He leaned on a cane, still weak, but determined to witness this moment. Asha hovered nearby, monitoring his condition while trying to hide her own excitement. I never thought I'd be so happy to see an Earth Union transport, Jonas remarked, his voice stronger than it had been since his injury. It's more than a transport, Lena replied. It's proof that we haven't been forgotten after all. The landing procedure seemed to take forever. Each careful maneuver of the ship drawing collective held breath from the watching colonists. When it finally touched down, raising a cloud of red dust, the cheer that went up could have been heard across Valles Marineris without communication equipment. Captain Jensen led the welcoming committee to the airlock, where they waited for the ship's crew to complete post-landing procedures. When the outer door finally opened, revealing the Earth Union insignia on the spacesuits of the disembarking crew, many colonists wept openly. The Irene had brought not just emergency supplies, but technologies that would transform life on Mars. Advanced 3D printing equipment for manufacturing replacement parts, biological modules capable of generating their own heat and light, and genetically modified seeds engineered to thrive in the challenging Martian conditions. Most importantly, it carried a formal charter from Earth Union, granting New Arian increased autonomy while ensuring continued support. The document recognized the colony's right to self-governance within the framework of Earth Union membership, a compromise that addressed both the need for independence and the reality of their interdependence. In the weeks that followed, New Arian underwent a remarkable transformation. The new technologies were integrated into existing systems, enhancing productivity and resilience. The hydroponics bay, under Lena's direction, expanded to include experimental sections where the modified seeds could be tested and adapted to local conditions. Medical facilities were upgraded with equipment that allowed Asha to provide better care for conditions specific to long-term Mars habitation. The geological team, led by Nadia, began exploring new areas of Valles Marineris, identifying resources that could further reduce their dependence on Earth shipments. Even Jeremiah Cade found a role in the new order, applying his military expertise to training a civilian emergency response team. The skills that had once made him a dangerous adversary now served to strengthen the colony's ability to handle future crises. 3 months after the Irene's arrival, New Arian celebrated its Renewal Day, marking both the anniversary of the colony's founding and its rebirth after the crisis. The central plaza had been transformed into a garden featuring both Earth plants and experimental Martian hybrids, a living symbol of their dual heritage. At the center stood a small monument, a cast model of Jonas's portrait, surrounded by the first successful crop of Martian-adapted wheat. A plaque beneath it read simply, Jonas Vega, Seed of Hope. The celebration brought together all elements of colony life, a feast featuring both hydroponically grown vegetables and synthetic proteins, music from various Earth cultures performed by resident musicians, and activities for the colony's children, who now played together regardless of which faction their parents had supported during the crisis. As twilight fell, and the Martian sky darkened to a deep purple red, Lena found herself standing on the observation deck, looking out over the vast expanse of Valles Marineris. The canyon walls glowed red in the fading light, while below, the lights of New Arion created a constellation of human presence on the alien landscape. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Jonas approaching, still using his cane but moving more confidently than before. "Quite a view," he remarked, joining her at the railing. "It never gets old," she agreed, "even after everything that's happened." "Because of everything that's happened," he corrected gently. "We see it differently now." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching as the first stars appeared in the Martian sky. "Earth Union's council meets tomorrow to discuss the expansion proposal," Jonas said eventually. "Do you think they'll approve it?" Lena considered the question. The proposal, developed jointly by New Orion's leadership and scientists, outlined a plan for establishing a secondary settlement deeper in Valles Marineris, where preliminary scans had indicated potential underground water sources. "I think they will," she said. "Not just because it makes scientific sense, but because they've learned the same lesson we have, that human presence on Mars isn't just about resources or political prestige. It's about extending the reach of human potential." Jonas nodded slowly. "From abandoned orphans to pioneers again." "We were never truly abandoned," Lena replied, thinking of the solidarity that had emerged from crisis. "We just had to remind Earth, and ourselves, what we're capable of." Below them, the lights of the colony glowed steadily against the gathering darkness, a beacon of human resilience on the red planet. New Arion had been tested by crisis and emerged stronger, its people bound together by shared struggle and collective achievement. Lena thought of the message she had sent during their darkest hour. "We are the children of Mars, abandoned but not defeated." It had begun as a cry for help, but had transformed into a declaration of identity. They were Martians now, shaped by the red planet's challenges and possibilities. As she and Jonas made their way back to join the ongoing celebration, Lena felt a deep certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, New Arion would face them together. They had learned that true strength came not from independence, but from interdependence, not just with Earth, but with each other. The orphans of Mars had found their family in one another,